first speaker this morning. Sarah Williams, the founder of the not-for-profit What Were You Wearing? Sarah founded What Were You Wearing Australia, a not-for-profit organisation that fights to end sexual violence. Starting in 2021, Sarah has collected over 26,000 stories from survivors and established Australia's first ever exhibition, festival and university advisory group on sexual assault awareness. She was recently named 2023 Newcastle Woman of the Year, New South Wales Volunteer of the Year by Youth Action, and Youth of the Year by Newcastle Business Club. She also had a massive win recently, which I heard about on Sunday, which I don't want to spoil. I'll allow Sarah to share that wonderful news with the rest of you. Please join me in welcoming to the stage, Sarah Williams.
Alrighty, so my name's Sarah Williams. It's lovely to be here today. Thank you for all having me here. I'm the founder of What Were You Wearing Australia, which is a non-profit organisation that focuses on education, awareness and advocacy on sexual violence. But as you'll see today, we really have been the past 12 months really going down that avenue of nightlife, night safety, and obviously drink spiking. Before I start, I want to acknowledge any Indigenous and First Nations and Torres Strait Islander people in the room and acknowledge that we're on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation. I'm an Awabakal woman. I come from Awabakal land, so it's something I always like to do when I start speaking. And something I like acknowledging as well is that First Nations people are disproportionately more affected by sexual violence than non-Indigenous Australians, and it's something that I always like to acknowledge and remind people when I do speeches, so that we have that in our minds and something to remember. Right, so I just want to encourage everyone before we get started, because it's early in the morning, to pour a drink of water. There's the 2 jugs on the table. Feel free to pour some water and make sure you have some water so you're ready to go for the next while. Alright. So what were you wearing? So as I said, we're a non-profit organisation. I started this at the start of 2021. I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse, adult sexual assault and domestic and family violence. I've got quite a lot of friends and other family that have also been through horrific crimes, and I just saw the need for there to be a non-for-profit and an organisation taking up that sexual violence space, particularly in Newcastle. But we're New South Wales wide, we're actually Australia wide, but predominantly New South Wales. So this is a few things that we do, but on the table is an orange document that really goes into a few of our specialised services. But our main one is our exhibition. So the first 2 photos go through that, and the exhibition is clothing on the wall. It's representations of outfits worn by survivors, and the aim is to dispel the myth that clothing led to assault, because as we know, you could be wearing anything, anyone, and unfortunately that can happen to you. And then as we get later on down the track, we're hoping to do one really soon that's all nightlife stories, so specifically, like doing it specifically on drink spiking stories and the nightlife. The other 3rd photo is one of our chill out zones. So we go around to most festivals around Australia and have a safe space. So it's sort of like a chill out zone. I'll get into that later. But we've also been going into clubs and nightclubs and bars, having spaces there as well. On top of that, we do survivor packs. So these are free and they're delivered to survivors pretty soon after the crime. They have resources in them, self-care items, a teddy bear, just to really give that, hope for the survivors to continue going. And then something we're starting in July is survivor healing groups, which are healing groups for survivors specifically. Learning, they're run by counsellors and psychologists. That's my big thing, is I want them to be run by the people who have that expertise and know, have that qualification behind it. And that was something that I, in the research of those groups, found was a lot of these groups are run by people. It's really good to have lived experience, and I think lived experience should be through everything. But if you're going to have vulnerable people in the space, as you all know, you need to have qualifications there as well. So we have psychologists run that with us. And Newcastle currently doesn't have any sexual violence specific groups. So that'll be really exciting to start that up, because it's definitely something that is needed. All right, so our learning points for today. We'll go through, obviously, a lot about drink spiking, why drink spiking occurs, the commonly used substances, how to identify a spiked drink, signs and symptoms of drink spiking, how to prevent drink spiking, how to respond effectively to a drink spiking incident, and the appropriate actions to prioritise safety, and then the support services that link with that. All right, so before we start that, I'm going to get everyone, if you haven't already poured a drink and you want a drink, pour a bit of a drink. But the exercise, oh my God, this computer is definitely going to fall today. But I want to encourage, so if you haven't had some water, to have some water, and I know that a few of you have already poured it. But I wanted to say, did anyone check or think any deeper about when they poured their drink of water from the jug? No. All right, so we're going to first also imagine that we're in a party now. We're not at a conference anymore, we're at a party. This is a massive party and we've just all poured our drinks. And I'd like everyone now to spend a minute looking underneath your jug of water on your table. A few of the jugs actually have something on the bottom saying that that jug's been spiked. It hasn't, I just want to clarify. We're not here today to actually spike you, so. So I just have a few questions for you guys. Did anyone question, not really what you were drinking, because obviously you probably know it was water, but did you question, I guess, where it came from, who poured it, who got it there in the first place? Did you watch it being put into the jug in the first place? Anyone? No. Obviously this is a party, this is a conference, it's a bit different. We're going to trust the hotel and everything, but in this party setting, that just reinforces the importance of watching your drink be poured, not getting someone to buy a drink for you, and that's something we really bring on, even if it is a friend, because we know a lot of the time drink spiking and sexual violence does happen by the people that are closest to you as well. And then also, knowing where your drink has come from, knowing who's pouring it, also watching the bartenders. Alrighty, so the next thing I wanted to do was, I know you all have like little notepads, so if you wanted to write the questions down, you can write them down. If not, just write your answers down. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and then these are going to be answered throughout the session, but we'll come back to them at the end as well, and you can ask any questions about them later. But if you just write your answers down, and we're going to take 2 minutes per each question for you on your tables to discuss the question, and I guess come up with a group answer together on what you think is the answer. Some of you might already know all the answers. I'm hoping not, but if you don't, then that's good. All right, so the first question is, what is the most commonly used drug to spike a drink? So I'll just give you guys 2 minutes to discuss amongst yourselves, and then we'll come back to the second question. Alrighty, we'll start the second question now. So the second question is, how long has it been since the first and last national report into drink spiking was released? So like a national study, really that deep research that everyone in Australia, where it comes out with statistics. How long has it been since the last one? And no using phones as well, please. Right, the third and last question is, are licensed venues required to report incidents of drink spiking to police? So I'll give you guys another minute or so to talk about that one, put an answer down for that one. So those answers will probably be answered throughout the whole thing, and we'll go through them later. We'll have it'll be interesting to know at the end what you guys came up with and if you were close or not. Alrighty, so today's presentation is obviously all about drink spiking. So drink spiking, if you weren't aware, is the act of adding drugs or alcohol to a person's drink without knowledge of consent. So we'll be going into the drink side, but just for your awareness, there's also other types of spiking, like people are spiking via food as well. So drink spiking obviously is the most common way, and it's something, I guess, as well that it's been happening forever. And I think for a while there, it really, because it's so underreported, and we'll get into that soon, it was just, forgotten about. It wasn't spoken about in the media. No one really put a focus or a lens onto it. And then more and more crimes are happening, and organisations like ours are seeing how often it's happening, and it's quite scary. So it's really good to be able to be, speaking about this and bringing awareness to drink spiking. So why drink spiking occurs? So it's usually done for many reasons, but usually to take advantage of someone. So sexual assault is one of the big ones. It's actually the most common motive is to sexually assault someone. And 1 in 3, like 1/3 of drink spiking incidents is usually to sexually assault someone or ends up in sexual assault. Because, as you drink spike someone, you're making them vulnerable and you're making them easier to, having crimes committed against them because they're unable to, a lot of the time, defend themselves. The other reasons are to commit theft. So we've seen a lot of the time people will do it so then they're more like lightheaded or a bit unconscious and they can transfer money from bank accounts, steal wallets or steal really anything. Peer pressure, something we've seen a bit, but it's probably on the more of the younger side, is in your like college parties, your like 17, 18-year-olds, more on like peer pressure, like doing cruel pranks. It's a really scary thing, and it's something that I'm like, oh my God, I would never do that. But it does happen. And obviously the last one is to exert power, which we know a lot of the time is, that can link into any of those, is to have that power over someone by spiking their drink and making them, a bit unstable. Alrighty, so we're going to get in today into my story. I've got 2 stories to share, and before I share them, I just wanted to let everyone, like a trigger warning, know that we're going to get into drink spiking, sexual assault, that sort of stuff. I won't be offended if this triggers you and you want to get up and leave before or leave during. I won't be upset or think that I've done a bad job. So in 2021, in February, I actually became really good friends with someone. And we had an intimate relationship quite often for about a month. And then in March, about a month later, I decided that I didn't really want to be with this person anymore because they were dealing drugs, they were taking drugs themselves, and it didn't really align with my life. So I didn't really want to be in a relationship type vibe with them. But I was okay to be friends with them. And after I ended that, the next night, this person arrived at my house at 8 p.m. They knocked on the door, they came in, they said they wanted to just hang out and watch a movie, and I was all good with that. And what that person had known, and just for prior background information, I'd been recently diagnosed with endometriosis at that time, and I was having quite a bad flare-up. So I was on codeine at the time. I was already really in and out, very sleepy, and because I wasn't sleeping because of the pain, I wasn't, in my most lively self. And, any movement I didn't have to take was something I was going to be all for. And this person suggested that they would go get me a drink before we kept watching the movie. And I thought, oh, hell yeah. I'm going to get a drink and it'll be a lot easier. And I think that this situation also shows that drink spiking can happen in your own life, in, one-on-one situations. It doesn't always have to be that party nightclub scene, but I'll get into that obviously more later. So my bedroom, obviously not near the kitchen. I haven't seen what has happened, but from my awareness, he's gone to the kitchen, poured me a drink of juice, and obviously put something into it, and brought it back. I've drank it, and within 5-10 minutes, I'm out. About what I thought was 10 minutes later was 2 hours later, I woke up to being raped. And yeah, that was a pretty hard thing that was happening. And then I was in and out of consciousness. I actually fell asleep again and woke up another time again to the same thing happening. After that whole crime and everything was done, I went to the hospital, told them all of this, and to this date, no one actually took a blood test at that time. So we're unable to know exactly what drug was used, or even 100% prove there was a drug used. There definitely was something to mix with that codeine. I'd like to think that maybe it was ketamine, because that does make the more unconscious side of thing. Could have been anything, but unfortunately that goes to show the lack of, I guess, duty of care of a hospital when you're told that, you know, taking those tests is really vital then for down the track if you want to do anything with that. So that, I guess, situation goes to show the importance of knowing that although we're talking about nightlife so much today, drink spiking can also happen in your own private life as well. So the second incident that I wanted to bring up and talk about was when I was drink spiked in a nightclub. So I had one drink at Pre's with a few friends, and then we went out to a local just like pub sort of club. There was heaps of people there. And when we got there, it was my partner at the time's friend, and we went and we were hugging everyone. So I got 2 drinks. I got 2 blue alizé and lemonade. And every time and this was October last year, 2022, every time I was saying hi to someone, I'd hug them and I'd put my hands over them. So I had no vision of my drinks whatsoever. And I wasn't holding the drink like this either. It was very freely like that. So that happened probably about 10 times. There was people everywhere, as well as I did leave my drinks to the side at one point and went and got them. So I ended up drinking about 1.5 drinks. And then about 10 minutes later, I went to the bathroom. Within seconds of getting to the bathroom, I was just vomiting absolutely everywhere, to the point where I messaged my best friend and I said, I literally wrote the words HELP, and he's here with me today, Ethan, but because he's a guy, he couldn't come into the bathroom and help me. So he tried to get the bar staff to come into the bathroom and see what was going on. At that point, I was on the ground, pretty much, this is so TMI, but like vomiting all over myself, in and out of consciousness. And the bar staff came in and said, oh, what's going on? I wasn't able to speak. I wasn't able to like speak, pretty much move. And they said, once you finished vomiting, get up and get out of the venue straight away. And I was like, oh Lord. I, at that point, didn't think I was spiked. I didn't even really think about that. I was more like, oh my God, like I literally felt like I was dying. And I definitely needed an ambulance to come to me, but I couldn't speak. I literally couldn't speak or action that at all. So I was probably in the bathroom for another 20 minutes with the bar staff outside the toilet saying to everyone, get that girl out, she needs to get out of the venue now. Eventually my friend was able to just pretty much ran into the bathroom. And luckily him and another girl were able to just come in the bathroom, sit with me, give me some water and get me up. Lucky for that, I genuinely feel like that probably saved my life. Got in an Uber and then got home, and then I was pretty messed up by those symptoms for the next probably 2 weeks. I was just my brain fog, just everything I was doing in life. I was just completely out of it. But I was, pretty disappointed looking back on that the venue was just very quick to make sure that I got out of the venue and got as far away from the venue as I possibly could, rather than, you know, taking a report, ensuring that I was okay, but also the ambulance most definitely should have been called. So those are my two situations of drink spiking. There's definitely a lot worse out there, and there's so many of them. So at What We're Wearing, we collect stories of sexual violence. So we have over 26,000 stories to date at the moment, with 14,000 of those stories being in relation to the nightlife, festivals, drink spiking, that whole scene in the music industry. And I guess that's why we wanted to take up a big aspect of looking into that area and working into that area, because the stories we were getting in were horrific, but we were also getting such a large number of stories. And I guess if you wanted to know how we collect those stories as well, just for further information, on our website, we have a share your story part where you can go share your story. It's all anonymous and it gets sent to an anonymous email that only myself and one other person looks at, and we collect those. The main idea of the stories is that they'll go in our exhibition. We never, particularly me, never expected to get more than like 100 in the start, let alone 1,000. But our social media, particularly TikTok, I think that's a great area if you ever want to do education on this area, is TikTok. Once our TikTok started to really blow up and we grew a massive amount of followers, the stories just kept coming in and coming in. So now, onto the statistics. So there's not actually many statistics at all, and these statistics are actually really out of date. So for that second question, I'll wait till a mic gets to someone, but did someone want to let me know 2 or 3 tables what your answer was to how long has it been since the first and last national report into drink spiking was released Australia-wide. What was your table's response? Maybe just choose a table. Oh,
We had a stab and said that there hasn't been one.
okay. Any other tables? Let's get one or two more.
This on? Yeah. Over 10 years ago.
Hi.
That was someone else, but yes. That's not it, but yeah. Cool.
Hi. We said over 20 years ago.
Okay, so where are we at? Oh,
Yeah, we believe that there was a national drug summit in the early 2000s, but none since.
so the last one that really went into drink spiking was 18 years ago. So we have this is the first statistic. Drink spiking in New South Wales is at its highest level in the past 5 years, was found through ABC, particularly looking into Newcastle, Wollongong and Sydney as the 3 worst areas for drink spiking. But when you look at their numbers compared to our numbers and other more, these community drug alcohol teams, the numbers of reports to police being 140 in Sydney compared to our thousands doesn't add up. And there being no studies or research done into this area is just so concerning. And as we know, 1/3 of all incidents are linked to sexual assault. I would probably think that if we did another survey or study now, it would probably be a lot higher. Even though that's already really high, I think it would be way higher because a lot of our stories when it comes to drink spiking is linked to sexual assault, unfortunately. And the other statistic that's able to find on the out there is that 70% of drink spikings occurred in licensed premises, so like nightclubs, pubs, those sort of places. I think that would pretty much be the same as well. But I think if we're going to do a study, it needs to be engaged with organisations and areas like everyone here today, like us in the area that are collecting these sort of things, and not just looking specifically into what is being reported to police, because as we know, it's underreported and a lot of the time reports aren't going to the police. Alrighty, so something we do know though is drink spiking and sexual violence are 2 of the most underreported crimes in Australia. So why don't people report the crime? Because I guess shame and guilt. They will think that it's their fault a lot of the time if they left their drink somewhere or if they didn't go buy the drink. They will feel guilt that they trusted someone to buy the drink for them. Another thing is a lot of people think that nothing will be done because so often, unfortunately, nothing is done. On a more criminal side, that's just gotten through to pretty much a lot of people, and a lot of people know that, and that was for my incident as well. So I have reported sexual violence crimes to police, but I haven't reported drink spiking. And my reason being is because I'm working in the space, I know so many people who've gone to police reported, and unfortunately it hasn't gone anywhere. And those reasons can be things like we have some stories where the security cameras weren't working that night, or that they were broken and they didn't realise until they were checked. Also, it doesn't sometimes specifically, because it's so dark, show anything being put into the drink. If you don't literally see the pill sometimes being put in, they won't class that. And obviously the evidence around that, if you don't go to hospital and get a blood test and stuff done that night, it is really hard to really do anything. So there needs to be obviously a lot more changes around that as well. And then a lot of people also think that it's too long after the crime to go and report. And that's also something as well. I always encourage people to report no matter what, because the more reports you get in, and if you're reporting a venue as well to police, you would really hope that after there's 50 reports on one venue, something will get looked into. Unfortunately, we get down to our campaign later, we know that's not the case, but hopefully one day. Alrighty, but why don't we hear about it more? So the reasons why we haven't been hearing about it more is because of victim blaming. We know that that's a massive thing. People are just presumed that they're too drunk, The symptoms of both being too drunk and being spiked are very similar. So they're a lot of the time just seen as the same thing. A lot of the time people are told that they've just had one too many, that they were asking for it, particularly they were asking for it because of what they were wearing, which goes into our organisation, that what were you wearing side of things. Another reason is because it's unreported. So because it's so underreported, and there is also that no research or study on it, it's not, in the news, it's not out there. People probably aren't thinking to actually even look into it or bring awareness to it in general as well. Which is why I think campaigns as well like ours is really important, because it's starting to bring that noise to the area that is much needed. So venues, to the third question that you guys have on there, venues don't have to report to police, and they don't actually technically have to take reports as well. Obviously they're encouraged, but they don't have to take reports. And an incident that we'll get into a bit later that started our campaign was specifically around security guards and the venue refusing to take a report. But yeah, venues don't have to report to police. And when I look at that not being something mandatory, I think, say if you have 20 different nightclubs and one's like, you know what, I'm going to report my 50 spiking incidents in 1 month to the police. Why would they do that when no other pub is doing that? And then they're going to start to be like, there's this pub that's got it, but there's all 19 others aren't reporting. So there's obviously an issue here, when we really know there's issues across the board. So that's really, really concerning as well for us. And bar staff and security guards are dismissing incidents, obviously being too drunk. It's not their fault though, in my opinion, because they're not trained properly. We get into that, and that's really a big part of our campaign, is that bar staff and security guards, unless they know it themselves, they're not trained to know what the signs and symptoms are, or really anything around that issue. Alrighty, so the substances. So some of the common substances is obviously alcohol, sedatives and hypnotics, so such as Valium or Xanax. So by slipping these central nervous system depressants into someone's drink, individuals can induce sedation, memory loss, and muscle relaxation. So that's making the victim more vulnerable to harm. GHB and GBL, so that's really commonly used as well, and was for a while there, because they're colourless and odourless, so you won't smell it and you won't see colour change. And tranquilizers such as ketamine is another category, because a lot of the time that can bring in that in and out of consciousness. Something I like to touch on as well though is that people with disabilities, as we know, also, that's a whole nother thing, but they can react completely different to any of these than someone without a disability would. And that's why the urge of having these discussions and talking about this is so important, because it's genuinely going to save lives. Because how it affects one person could be different to how it affects someone else. And, it's a massive, serious issue. Alrighty, so on that, I'm going to ask that first question again, which is, what is the most commonly used drug to spike a drink? And if we can have 3 tables, I guess, say what they think is the most commonly used drug to spike a drink.
Josh said alcohol. We had alcohol too.
Is that it?
Valium. So we had, Xanax, GHB and ketamine, or GHB liquid.
And alcohol.
Oh, and alcohol.
All of them. Awesome. Alrighty, so alcohol is actually, it's not even just our data, it's out there. Alcohol is the most commonly way to spike drink these days. I think back in the day it was Rohypnol, and there was that roofie, the date rape jug, and a lot of the others as well. GHB was really big as well, but at the moment it's alcohol, and I feel like that's because the perpetrators have gotten smarter. It's a lot harder, in my opinion, to be able to prove that there was, I guess, more alcohol in the system than if it was a drug. So there's that. And there's also something to add is adding extra alcohol is spiking and is illegal. It's something that not many people know. or think. A lot of time at parties, they think they're doing a friend a favour by adding in 6 extra shots because it's going to help them get more drunk. That's actually spiking, and it is a crime. And as we know, and I'll get Ethan up there now, we're just going to do a bit of a demonstration. We've really seen that drink spiking is happening, yes, by people coming into the clubs and patrons, but a lot of the time now by bartenders. So it's happening behind the bar before you get your drink, and that's why I really bring that focus on watching the bartender pour the drink and not having a friend go and buy your drink, because it is happening by bar staff. Yeah, so we're going to show a bit of an example here on how we've gone into bars and we've spoken to them. We've spoken to even people who have admitted to spiking before on purpose and how they have done that. Ethan's just going to demonstrate, how that can be done.
So this is so what bartenders will do, before you've seen it, is they should be doing it is one shot and in. What you'll see them do is or and then that. So instead of actually doing one shot, which what someone is asking for, they're really putting in an extra 3 shots or 4 shots. Now, some people, including me when I was 18, would have seen them go, oh yes, I'm getting 2 extra shots for not even the price, but that is spiking, and a lot of people are not actually wanting that. They want their vodka and raspberry with 1 shot, not 5 shots.
Hell yeah, thank you. Awesome. So, feel free to head. Thanks. Yes, that's really important, and something that I always, when I talk to particularly young people or do this type of workshop, is to remind young people that if you think, let's just use this for example, if you've left it somewhere or for some reason it's this full or even just like there, you think it's been spiked, you actually should be allowed to go up to the bar and say, look, I think this has been spiked, and they're meant to dispose of it straight away and give you another one for free. The reason being, and a lot of bars don't do this, it's what they should be doing. So we go around and we try to, educate that and talk to that it's more important that you're doing that than someone end up drinking it and end up being spiked. But it's something obviously that we want to really force and make that, something, because it's something that should be done. But the reason for that is because we find young people, uni students particularly, if you're out and about, maybe Newcastle, I don't know, $11 drink, sometimes cocktails around here like $25, you would rather, and a lot of the time the attitude is you'd rather just drink that, even though especially if you're not sure, you're like, oh, it might be, but it might not be, then go pay another $25 and get a whole new drink and then have that one wasted. So that's why that's really important, because, yeah, it's saving lives. Awesome. Alrighty, so has your drink been spiked? These are 4 ways to know if your drink has been spiked. And recognizing these and having awareness on these is really important. So sinking ice, so paying attention to the behavior of ice cubes. So if you notice that the ice sinks rapidly instead of floating, it could be an indication that a substance has been added. So certain drugs or substances can alter the density of the liquid, causing ice to sink or behave differently than expected. So now, foggy appearance. If a drink appears cloudy, foggy, or has an unusual haze, it might suggest that there's something been added to it. However, keep in mind that some alcoholic beverages naturally do have a cloudy appearance, so it's essential to consider the context and your expectations of the drink. Excessive bubbles, excessive bubbling or fizzing in a drink, especially if it's not carbonated, could be a sign of a foreign substance. Spiking a drink with certain substances can cause unusual reactions that are not typical. And changing colour. So any sudden change in colour of a drink, especially if it becomes significantly darker or takes on an unusual hue, should raise suspicion. Substances added to a drink can alter its colour, and such changes are not typically normal in most beverages. But as we talked about before, that GHB and GBL, they are odourless and colourless, which really, reiterates that, the importance of this stuff, because it's not going to show up as being a smell or a change in colour. Alrighty, so legal ramifications now. So in New South Wales, there's fines and up to 2 years in imprisonment. So there's potential gaps in the coverage of offences covering this category of drink spiking in New South Wales, Victoria and ACT. This is because the offence specifically targets the administration of poisons, injurious substances, noxious things, stupefying or overpowering drugs, and just drugs in general, and they don't necessarily cover spiking with alcohol. So drink spiking with the intent to commit a sexual offence. So all states and territories except the ACT have serious offences covering drink spiking with a drug with intent to enable or act of sexual penetration, and obviously up to 10 years of life imprisonment. The offences in South Australia and Western Australia and the Northern Territory cover this category of drink spiking the best and most comprehensively, as they apply to sexual offences more generally. They're not just limited to sexual penetration, so they'll go into obviously like oral, all the whole range of stuff, and they also do cover drink spiking with alcohol as well. So it is also, really concerning that we know that that's the most common way, but in New South Wales, technically, if you are spiked with alcohol, nothing is really going to happen if you go to the police or go to court. Alrighty, so signs and symptoms. So some of the signs and symptoms of being spiked is feeling drunk, woozy or drowsy, feeling out of it or drunker than expected, mental confusion, speech difficulties such as slurring, memory loss, loss of inhibitions, nausea and vomiting, breathing problems, so finding it hard to breathe. And that's why we bring up that, it's really similar to being too drunk as well, because like that nausea and vomiting, can happen if you've just had too much to drink as well. Muscle spasms or seizures, loss of consciousness, an unusually long hangover, a severe hangover when you've had little or no alcohol to drink. So we find that a lot of the time drink spiking victims, they'll tell us that they only had 1 or 2 drinks that night, and it's their body and their reactions to everything seems like as if they've had 10. We go into more, so obviously loss of balance and visual problems is another one. Dizzy or faint is one of the biggest signs to know that we need to put that person in a safe space or sit them down, give them water and monitor them really closely. Obviously if someone passes out, waking up, feeling uncomfortable, confused, or with memory blanks from the night before, that's also big signs. But as you guys could probably agree, a lot of those do come over into being too drunk. So it's really important as we get on to be able to take every incident really seriously. Alrighty, prevention. So don't accept drinks from strangers. Don't take your eyes off of your drink, and don't leave it somewhere. Try to have it all the time on you. Something we encourage is when you have your drink, hold it like that as you walk around or if you're dancing or something. Signage is a really important one. So something we really want to see established is all nightclubs and bars in New South Wales to have 2 signs, mandatory signs. One behind the bar for bar staff to know what to do if someone reports an incident to them, and then one in the bar for patrons so they can know the signs and symptoms and what they should do if they think themselves or a friend was spiked. If you think your drink's been spiked, trust your gut, take it to the bar and get them to give you a free replacement. Be aware, report any suspicious behaviour to the venue as well. And I think that's also important to acknowledge being an active bystander. So if you see or hear of that behaviour happening, report it to the venue, step in and make sure that that's not happening. Alrighty, so now I'm going to get with Ethan again, and we're going to show you a few things that we do and have. Obviously with drink spiking there being no studies and stuff, it's not the best that we would hope for. So if you just want to hand out the coasters and some of that. Alrighty, so something we started last year was drink spiking tests. This is what they look like here. and we were able to only find these and something like these from the UK. They cost about $60, $70 from the UK, and all you get is 20 tests in them. And we couldn't find anywhere in Australia that manufactures them. So if anyone wants to start up a business, it's a good business idea, and hit me up. So these as well, the other issue is they only test GHB, yeah, I'll tell you the rest, but it's like GHB, ketamine, and yeah, those two. So that's the other issue, is that it doesn't test everything. So it looks like this, and we'll show you how to do it, but pretty much you're meant to have the glove on, or you're meant to use your straw, not your finger, but I'll use my finger anyway. So you get a bit of your drink, and you get it from the straw, and you use your straw, don't use your finger. And then you put it on the A, and you smear it in, and smear it in on the B too. And then you wait 2 minutes, and if it comes up blue, it's been spiked by either of those drinks. So it's something that we implemented last year, and we wanted to have as an added measure, but knowing that, yes, this is great, but ideally we would have something like this where it tests most or pretty much all of them, and that it's readily available in clubs and doesn't cost $60 for a pack of 20. But I think it's a good measure, and it's good for if someone wanted to have them or know that they're there in an advocacy service like us that has safe spaces. So, you can go there and potentially check for those too. So the other thing that New South Wales government has started, I wanted to know, did anyone know that these were a thing before this, the stickers? Some yes, some no. Hang on. I think it's really great. So it's a sticker, and it only came out, it was like a few months ago pretty much. And you pretty much put it on the drink, and your straw goes through the middle, and it's to pretty much stop the drink from there. So it is good, it's really good on these, but if a venue uses paper cups, and it ain't working, so you got to hope you got some glass cups. The other issue is no one knows about these. If you guys don't know about these, I know a few people put their hands up, but majority of not knowing about this, it's not spoken about, it's not out there knowing. So a lot of venues we've gone around, so we know that as a venue, you're actually allowed to go to the police stations and say, can I have 1,000 or so of these, and get massive packs like this and have them. But you're advised to only have them behind the bar, and if someone comes up to you and says, can I have one, you give it. You're not really meant to have them on display and people know about them. So I don't know if that's because of a limited resources, I'm not really sure, but sort of defeats the purpose in my opinion. That's me just being really honest. But it's a really good initiative. I think it's really good. There was something done in the UK, which is I think definitely where they got this from, called Stamp Out Spiking. A really, really awesome initiative, and something that needs to be brought definitely here. So I think it's a start, but yeah, it needs to be, utterly available. Yeah, so you actually can go to your police station and you can say, it's called the Drink Safe New South Wales, and they can give you some. You've got to be able to be from a venue, or we have said we're from an organisation that gave it to us. So everyone should be able to get them. You probably just could say you're from a venue and get them as well. But for more awareness on that, Ethan and I were trying to get a hold of a lot of these. Only one station in Newcastle has these. So if you think about all the venues that they were all trying to get them from that one police station that has them, that's pretty difficult. As well as calling Sydney stations. We probably called around 5 stations and they didn't know what they were. So it's a bit concerning if this is New South Wales government initiative and the police stations aren't aware of what it is or have it on board. But yeah, you should be able to get these from police stations. The other thing that comes as well that they have is coasters. And I think these should be out everywhere in pubs. I think that definitely, in my opinion, they could have worked with an organisation or a community drug and alcohol team to have made these and then implemented them, because they could have been done a lot more appealing for young people, in my opinion, with a lot better information on that than just a photo of 2 drinks. The back does say prevent drink spiking, but it could have said something, this is just me being harsh though, it could have said something like, don't drink spike. And I think if they did if they did a consult or a working group with different organisations, this would have looked a lot different. It's a good start because we don't have studies and the area and the sector is not usually looked into, but could have been a lot better. From the police station as well. Yeah, so then they also have little flyers as well. I'll show you. So the flyers go into this. It's pretty much everything we're speaking about. And it just briefly covers quite a lot of different stuff with drink spiking. But you can get that from the police station as well, which is really awesome. Awesome, alrighty. So I'm going to go into now how to respond to a complaint of drink spiking. So alert staff. We always tell people to alert the staff. Don't leave the venue. It's really not that great because they try and encourage you to leave the venue, but you don't want to leave the venue. Call 000 if the signs are deteriorating, particularly if they're obviously in and out of consciousness. Don't have any more alcohol. Try and drink water if it's can, but sometimes it might not be the best thing to do. And try to talk and get them to talk. If they're not talking or unable to, that's a big sign to call the ambulance as well. So ensure the patron is safe. If they're non-responsive, call 000 straight away. At any time, if their symptoms do deteriorate, call 000. Bring the patron to a safe space, somewhere quiet, to ensure that they have a friend with them as well, or someone that they might be with. But I think that it's also on the staff to acknowledge, is this person, and doing things to try and figure out, is this person the perpetrator that's with them, or is this a friend? And acknowledging that you've got someone vulnerable in your space. That's why education is really important. Go through our suggested checklist that we'll go through. Get management involved and security. A report must be taken. It needs to be taken. It's really, really important that a report be taken and that be acknowledged. And we always say, as a bar staff or as a security guard, you should also note down a report as a witness, so that you've witnessed their effects of whatever's happening as an aftermath, because that can really help them out later down the track if they do decide to report. All right, questions to ask the patron. So we had a few victims of drink spiking. We asked them, were these questions that maybe you would think would be okay if you were asked? You need to remember as well, a lot of the time they won't be able to talk or respond. So that's why we need to get them to the hospital. But asking what their name is. Can you tell me how you ended up here tonight? Did anyone buy you a drink? Did you leave your drink somewhere? And so those questions, how we've worded them, is to word them so that they're not victim blaming. Because the first questions that usually gets asked is, oh, how much did you have to drink? Or why did you drink 5 drinks? So those questions are specifically worded, and we checked with a few victims to see if that would come across. But we always say, ensure that you remind them that you believe them, that you're there for them, you support them, and you'll do what you can to ensure that they are okay. So some added measures are safe spaces in venues. So having an advocacy organisation there on nights out like ours. So our space, I'll get into in a bit. Quiet and safe spaces for victims to be looked after. We've heard of many times where someone's reported to security outside the venue that they think they've been assaulted or harassed, and they've been made to tell their story in front of a line of 100 people. That's just not it. Develop a SASH, sexual assault and sexual harassment prevention and response policy. So all pubs, nightclubs and bars should have this. This should be the bare minimum, but not all of them do have it, unfortunately. So that's our hopes with our campaigns and stuff, that also this will be something that's implemented, because bar staff and security guards need to know what to do. There needs to be a policy there, procedure, so that if something happens, they know how to deal with that. Use signage and other methods to communicate to clientele what they should do if they experience or witness any crime. Publicly commit to maintaining a harassment-free venue. So I think that's really important, but also committing to wanting to end drink spiking. So with our campaign, we found that there's about 3 venues in Newcastle that always share our posts. They always will share our posts and say, come to us if you think this has happened. We love the work that these guys are doing. I think that's it's amazing. I think that's really good because it's showing everyone that then follows them that this place is really acknowledging that this happens. And yeah, so it needs to be happening everywhere, but I think there are those progressive bars and nightclubs, but there's still so many that are so back in the time where it's like, nah, this does not happen here. Keep a log of incidents and report to police. So we really need to be getting our venues to start reporting this to police, or even establishing something like a working group where, say, let's just say in Newcastle, 12 chosen bars and pubs come together and they meet once every 3 months and they tell each other their reports or what they're doing, so that it's like a safe space for the pubs to come together and tell them together what's happening, but it also will get told to police and the council of the area. Yeah, that could be a way that could potentially it could happen. And engage with appropriate organisations to establish best practice. So making sure, like, go to those organisations like us that have the expertise, have the lived experience and know what we are talking about, and we know the ways as well that should be implemented in these venues. Alrighty, so next one is what we wearing safe spaces. So on the back of the orange sheet, there's like a little photo. It's pretty small, but on our socials and on our website, this goes into it deeper. But we have safe spaces at most Australian festivals, and we also will go into a lot of nightclubs. They're bigger parties. So we're lucky. We have 55 volunteers for our Newcastle team. So we're lucky Newcastle-wise, we usually will have a safe space every weekend and have for the past 12 months. Our plans is to try and get more and more people on board so we can have these more often. So at the back there, and I'll encourage anyone to go over there later, we have our banner and a table of resources. We usually have that exact setup in the safe space. So it's got things like safe sex items, feminine hygiene products like tampons and pads. We usually have fun things like bubbles and stuff there as well as resources. And then bean bags, pillows, picnic blankets, and things, so if anyone wants to chill out at the festival particularly. We have a water bubbler with constant water being there for people. And we're lucky that some of the venues will usually bulk buy like a packet of like heaps of water bottles, which I think is really awesome that they're taking that initiative to do that. And another thing that we do as an added measure is we offer fairy bread. So we make bulk fairy bread at pretty much all of our safe spaces and festivals because, yeah, it's sobering them and as well as, it's getting them to smile, which is obviously what we want at the end of the day. But these spaces are really important because, we, at festivals particularly, we will work alongside, if anyone knows, I'm sure you will do Red Frogs and like Dance Wise. So they still have their space, but they focus more than that day on their other stuff, all the million issues that they deal with. But then sexual violence and drink spiking isn't forgotten about, and it's really brought out to the open and it's got a space. So we found as well, survivors of sexual violence and drink spiking didn't want to go to a safe space where people were vomiting, having seizures or having any reactions, which is what was always happening in the Dance Wise and Red Frog spaces, which is really great. There's a space for that. But we need also a space where people can come to just relax and chill out. So we found that our spaces were really good. We've been at quite a lot now. We go to all the Groove and the Moose, Spilt Milks, Museum in the Park. We've gone to 1 million. To the point where now people reach out when there's a festival and say, oh, are you guys going? Please tell us you're going. The response from festivals has been really good. From majority of them, particularly the bigger festivals, they want that added space there. The issue is we do it volunteer. So, it's great that we have the volunteers there, but from my opinion, a space like that is essential and should be paid. So it's something we hope. We actually were lucky we got a grant from the recent election to continue our spaces actually paid for 6 months. So that's really amazing. But yeah, we find that the bigger festivals are really accepting of it, whereas some of the littler festivals, they're like, oh, it doesn't happen here, but luckily we have the stories to show from each different festival, and it can be a big shock, and it definitely is a big shock to them. Some of them don't even want to acknowledge it, but that's an over the time issue. So yeah, I encourage you to go over the space and have a look at what it looks like. Obviously it's a lot bigger. Some venues we have like a massive hall and we take up the whole hall, whereas other venues we have like 6x3 like metre marquee. We make do with whatever space we have, but yeah, they're really important spaces. I think it's something that anyone can set up, and if anyone wanted to set one up or work with us in something I also like doing is sharing the What We're Wearing safe space with other organisations. So in our Melbourne ones, we're going to start sharing with She's a Crowd, which is another sexual violence organisation they're really trying to get data into festivals. So we're going to have a space there, as well as we'll try and usually partner, so there's more than just the one organisation, and there's just that more resources and more things available for patrons, as well as I really like being able to give that opportunity to other organisations as well, because I see the importance of bringing awareness to, so people like young people particularly, because that's who's there, can get awareness of what's out there. So yeah, that's something we also do. Alrighty, so back to the drink spiking. Drink spiking impacts long term, so it can result in residual trauma. Victims can develop anxiety around going out, especially to bars and clubs. So we know a lot of victims that just don't want to go out anymore. So we're about to start an initiative called the Safer Nights Out initiative, where once a month we'll be having a party or an event at a different club each month, where we'll implement everything we've spoken about today. There will be trauma-informed staff there, as well as a counsellor there, and people to just look out on everyone. And so then, victims can potentially go out maybe once a month, meet new people, go out with their friends, and still have that party vibe, even though they're really scared to go out to your, other typical club. There's also the potential to develop trust issues amongst friends. If someone spiked your drink, or you might become weary of getting to know new people, that's a massive, massive issue. And we always suggest, if someone's been drink spiked, to get victim services counselling, which is 22 hours of free counselling through that's New South Wales wide. Depression, anxiety, and PTSD, very common ones. And then one that's not spoken about nearly enough is OCD. So I developed and was diagnosed with OCD from my drink spiking incident. And a lot of the time, I'm very well managed now, but back last year, I would barely I wouldn't drink out of any cups. I'd only drink out of a can if I saw where the can was. I would not touch my fridge or anything in my kitchen. If I went to a pub, I couldn't eat from their plate or their cutlery because of the contamination issue around drink spiking and thinking that something's going to be drink spiked. So it's something that I always like to, bring awareness to, because drink spiking is not spoken about enough, but also that impact also, you think, depression, anxiety, that's definitely going to come up, but you probably don't think, OCD will come from that. So that's definitely a long-term impact, because it's something you deal with, and I've been dealing with and still deal with pretty much every day. Alrighty. So support services, emergency always, if a situation deteriorates, call 000. We always say to people 1-800-RESPECT and Lifeline as your afterward services, but also that victim services counselling. So if you're a victim of crime, and I think we need to start acknowledging that drink spiking is a crime. And so for me particularly, another reason why I didn't report the second incident of drink spiking at the club was because I thought, that's nowhere near as bad as half the stuff I've been through before. So it's just nothing. And I've had police officers ask me in the past, it doesn't make sense why, you haven't reported that, and then you're only speaking about it now. It's because I didn't think it was bad. I genuinely didn't think drink spiking was as bad as, and it might not be, but I think it's still something that we need to acknowledge as a crime. It's a victim, it's something that happens to someone, and those people should be encouraged to access that 22 hours of free psychology, because it's really important. Alrighty, so on to our drink spiking campaign. In December 2022, we had our first ever inaugural What Were You Wearing ball. Really great night, and then we decided to go to a pub down the road. It was more like a nightclub, and have drinks and carry on for the rest of the night, celebrate our year's successes. And so we did that. I had one of our team members actually come up to me and say that they were concerned because one of our other team members was around 5 guys, and that she was a bit disconcerted. So I was like, all right, I'll keep an eye on it, we'll keep an eye on it. And if anything happens, we'll obviously try and get her away from the situation. Then it got to the end of the night where they were closing the pub, and we witnessed her being pretty much dragged out of the club, down the stairs, out of the club by 3 of the 5 guys. We pretty much ran after her to try and get her. Luckily, we knew what was potentially going on, and we knew, we work in the area every day, so we got to her just as she got outside. They were trying to get her to go into a car with them. We stopped her, and she couldn't speak. She didn't know what was going on. I just said, stay with us. We got the guys to go away and leave, which was really good. And we took her down about 100 metres to a little corner store to have water and something to eat. Within about 2 minutes of her sitting down on the ground outside, she was unconscious. Then in a minute she came back, in and out of consciousness. She didn't know what was happening. She couldn't speak. You could just see on her how confused she was. I was pretty scared. There was about 10 of us there, all volunteers. And we said, all right, you guys call the ambulance, you guys stay. And I knew that what I wanted to do was go to the venue and make a report. Reason being, she's one of my closest friends, and she was spiked at that same venue 4 months earlier. And the reason why it didn't go through past investigation at the police was because she didn't make a report on the night. And that I've seen the effects of that, of it not being able to go to court, not being able to get justice. I'd seen that for 4 months. So I knew while everyone was taking care of her, while people were calling the ambulance, I wanted to take care of that. So I went to the venue and I approached the security, and the security guard I was talking to was the head of security on the night. And I said, look, we think that our friend has definitely been spiked. We want to make a report. Maybe she can come in a few days or something, but I would like to start the report so you guys are aware of that. And the first response was, no, we don't take reports here on that. I wasn't too, I was educated on it, but not too much. But something in me just knew that that wasn't right. And I said, no, surely you've got to take a report. And the security guard refused to take a report. He said that he would look at her. So we actually got her up, and 2 people were pretty much carrying her over back to the club. So we were only 100 metres down from the club, and not even that, honestly. And we got her back. She was standing like this, in and out of consciousness, couldn't speak. And he looked at her and he said, no, you're not spiked. And I started being like, what the hell? And I was like to him, no, she might not be, but also she's presenting every sign and symptom. I think we need to take this pretty seriously. I think she could be. She's been spiked, before, and it's very similar. And he just continued to repeat that he didn't believe she was spiked, encouraged us to call the ambulance, which was good, which we did, but wouldn't take a report and said that the venue doesn't take reports. So then I asked to speak to the venue management. Someone came out, and to our awareness now, that person decided to propose to be the venue management, but actually was just the licensee, and said they also don't take reports, and it's not something that any venue does. And that if it's something that they want to worry about, to go to the police, and the police can just look into it and get in touch with them if needed. So I eventually got pretty upset and angry, asked the security guard to take a report and said I needed it to be done. And he opened his phone app, his notes app on his phone, and wrote a few details down. So there obviously wasn't a system or anything in place there at all. We got our friend to the hospital, got her all there safe. I went with her and stayed with her there for about 5 hours. She was spiked, was confirmed she was spiked. And yeah, that was really concerning. So I contacted the venue the next day, said, look, this is what's happened. They were able to admit that that wasn't venue management. You know, did you go to, really sorry, but also said they don't take reports, and if we really wanted to, we just need to go to the police. At that point, I'd been in touch with our local MP, and I said, surely this isn't right. He agreed that, no, that's not right. And yeah, from all that, also there was a whole nother, it's all on Facebook, but there was a whole nother incident of just aggression and all that stuff. We went to Facebook and we said, this is our incident. We had about 500 people within 2 days reach out and say they had similar experiences at nightclubs in Newcastle and Sydney. And that just raised absolute red flags to me, and I knew that something needed to be done. So I started thinking about what we could do. So we started up a campaign with the Newcastle MP, Tim Crackenthorpe, calling for mandatory drink spiking and sexual violence awareness training for all bar staff and security guards across nightclubs in New South Wales. So with that, I didn't want to start a campaign where we're just in the community and just, you know, that's really good. I love doing that sort of stuff. It's what we're all about. But I knew this issue was a lot more serious than what we had. It needed to be something that was pushed through mandatory and made that decision by Parliament on a non-government level. So we launched a government petition, went straight to that area. We launched that in December. And so for that what happens there was we needed to collect 20,000 signatures. If we collected 20,000 signatures, we would be able to trigger a parliamentary debate on the issue, meaning that the Parliament has to debate the issue and decide if they're going to implement it or not, rather than trying to go through media. Because we've done a lot of campaigns before, we've had media attention on them, and we knew that going through change.org, particularly, this was my thought process, was change.org could give me a lot of awareness and media coverage, but if we really want to make that systematic change in the area, it needed to be a government petition. So we worked for 6 months, all 50 of us, trying to get 20,000 signatures. At first I was like, oh, this is going to be so easy. We've got about, at that time, about 60K on TikTok. Oh, we've got it. It's a lot harder than it looks because it's not just clicking a button. You've got to put your name, last name, email, do a robot thing. And people don't want to do that. People are lazy. So unless you're really into it, you do it. And it was ending on the 25th of May. So we were pretty nervous we weren't going to do it, but we did it. We collected 20,000 signatures on our campaign. So yeah, we found that out last Wednesday, that we did that, which means that now that's going to be debated in Parliament in the end of June, which is really exciting. And the issue was as well, which is why I was so scared it wasn't going to hit it, was if it didn't hit it, that issue could never be petitioned again. So yeah, so we couldn't then go and be like, all right, we're going to do it again and try again in a year, or we couldn't be like, oh, we're going to go change.org. If we wanted to do it again, we'd have to really change the whole thing. It would really have to be completely different. So we were so close and we did push it. We were pretty much spinning out every weekend for the past 6 months, getting people on board. But what it looks like is we want to amend the RSA. We want to amend the RSA to have a section on drink spiking training and a section on sexual violence awareness training. So a lot of stuff that I did today needs to be in the RSA. That's what we want to do. And then a whole nother section on sexual violence awareness, which if you want to know more about that, get in touch. But on that sort of stuff, because we looked into it, there's nothing on it. We got the MP's office looked really deeply into the RSA. There's nothing really on it, which is pretty scary. And there needs to be so much more on that issue. If we have it in the RSA, our bar staff and security guards will know what to look out for, and hopefully it's a start to then making the attitudes changed and people taking things a lot more seriously, which is really exciting. So yeah, now we offer training as an added measure. So obviously we're hoping the RSA will get changed. We're hoping there'll be mandatory signage, but we're also hoping that then bars, organisations will take on our added training as just added training to know more about the situation. I think that's it, eh? Oh no, that's our social media. And I want to encourage anyone, if you're from any, it's on the table as well in the orange, and there's a little form sheet as well that goes into our module specifically. So we have ones for bar staff, so venue staff. We have ones for venue management, so that will go more into what you need to do, your duty of care, the SASH prevention and procedure. And then we have ones for like young people, school kids, like universities, that sort of thing. But we also have ones as well for organisations so that you guys also have and are equipped on the knowledge of this area, because yeah, it's a massive fight, and like luckily we've been able to get it now there, so there starts to be talks. It's up to the politicians now, so hopefully they will back it and we'll be able to amend the RSA. But yeah, it's been a pretty massive thing. But thank you for listening to me all today. I really appreciate you all being here and taking the time to listen. It's not the easiest thing, being only 22, being able to stand up here and talk on this issue. So I appreciate you all being very nice. But yeah, did anyone have any questions, or if you want to chat after, you can find me. But we have questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Your story is so, I'm really kind of feel connection with your story. But I'll talk to you after, during the lunch hours. But what I want to ask you, you mentioned about volunteering. What's the criteria for volunteering? What's the process?
So we take anyone or everyone. As I'm sure most of you do. Our big three areas of what we're wearing though, that we fight on though, is First Nations, LGBTQIA plus community and disability, because we know those are the three most areas. But we take anyone of any age, and it's really awesome because I am actually the second youngest of a team of 50 leading it, so sometimes it throws me a bit. But we have people all the way up to 65 years old, people that are lawyers, counsellors, do a million different things as their day job. And I think that's why we're able to achieve things like this campaign, is because it's people from the community, you know, doing a million other things, but also then taking the time to do things like this as well. And then, like, you know, seeing and hearing our mission and what we've been able to achieve, and I guess just believing in what we do. So yeah, anyone. We obviously encourage more guys as well. We've got about 5 male identifying people, which is really awesome. I think that's really important because it's an area where it needs, like, it happens to males all the time as well. A lot of our stories in drink spiking is also males as well, where they assume that the perpetrator was trying to spike their girlfriend, but they've actually just drank their girlfriend's drink and ended up being the one spiked. So yeah, it's definitely, yeah. No, thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, anyone can volunteer.
Looks like you might have a new volunteer.
I was just wondering if there's any reports of vapes being spiked. Have you heard?
No, I haven't looked into the vape area. I know that's a massive area, and I know you guys going to get into it later. But I haven't looked into the vapes. I've looked, and I know there's food. But yeah, we've been focusing more on drink. Yeah, good question.
I was just wondering, with your personal story about your friend being spiked, are you able to say when she had her test at the hospital, what was the substance that she was spiked with?
Yeah, she was ketamine.
It was ketamine, okay.
Yeah.
I've already got one, but thank you. This was a fantastic presentation, and thank you for sharing your story. It was really powerful, and I was engaged the whole time, which doesn't happen for every single lecture we have. But I just really want to know, and I think there's a lot of other people in the room that want to know, if you're willing to travel to the regions across New South Wales. Fantastic.
Yeah, so
we will be finding you.
Yeah, we do. Like, we have team members pretty much all across New South Wales, but a lot of our team travels. We just recently were in Wollongong and Sunshine Coast. Yeah, I know, Sunshine Coast as well. But yeah, a lot of what we do at the moment is travelling, which is really cool because I like travelling. So yeah.
I guess it's probably more of a question for CDAT more than anything else. It's interesting that you had to struggle to get 20,000 signatures, whether CDAT plays a part probably in a number of different petitions put to government as a group, we could probably look at that as a process.
Absolutely, Mitch. It was something that we'd actually said to Sarah when we first met, is that please let us know. We would love the CDATs to know about it. This was a great platform to bring it to all of the CDATs as a collective message. But now that you've
so the
achieved
plan
that,
was to get you guys all to sign, and to share it around and get the signatures, but we did it. So
you didn't really need our help.
No, we did,
but we're really grateful for yours.
No, thanks so much.
We've just got one over here with Natasha up the back.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Sarah,
No,
for sharing your
course.
story and learning more about the organisation. I just had a question in terms of the modules. Was there a fee associated in terms of to start delivering that?
Our finance team will be able to go through it. We do charge for some. It just really depends. Like, obviously, we really want to be trying to fund our services for long term, because that funding goes straight to them being able to pay for our safe spaces at Nights Out, and things like our survivor packs and stuff like that. But for some instances, we do just do it for free. We went to a few different schools as like a trial run in Newcastle and did it. So it's more like we're happy to negotiate. Thanks, guys.